Today, we are pulling back the curtain on how the pros really size up an investment manager. It's not just about that big, flashy return number. It's about a single, powerful metric that tells you if a manager's success is the real deal or if they just got lucky.
So let me ask you a question. Imagine one fund is up 15%. Another one is down 5%. It's a no-brainer which one is better, right?
Well, you might be surprised. In the world of professional investing, the answer is not necessarily. The real story you see is always so much deeper than just that one number.
And to get to that real story, the pros use a specific tool. Think of it as their secret weapon. It helps them look past what happened and really understand how it happened. And most importantly, if that performance can happen again. And this is all about moving beyond those simple returns. It's about getting a much smarter picture of what's called risk-adjusted performance.
That tool is called the information ratio, or IR for short. And honestly, the best way to think about it is as a measure of a manager's efficiency. It doesn't just ask, hey, what was your return? It asks, how much skill did it take to beat the market, and how much risk did you take to get there?
And here is its most critical job. The information ratio is specifically designed to separate genuine, repeatable skill from just pure, dumb luck. It tells you if a manager truly added value or if they just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
So, how does it actually do that? How does it measure skill? Let's pop the hood and see exactly how this ratio works.
It all comes down to this really simple-looking formula. The information ratio is just the active return divided by the tracking error. Now, it looks straightforward, but trust me, these two pieces tell a really powerful story about reward and risk.
So that formula is really built on two key pillars, the reward and the risk. Let's break down each one, and we'll start with the reward part.
Okay, pillar number one, the top part of the fraction, is the active return. This is the reward. It's super simple. It's the fund's return minus the benchmark's return. So if your fund got you 10% and its benchmark, maybe the S&P 500, only returned 8%, your active return is 2%. That's the raw value the manager brought to the table.
Now for the second pillar, the bottom part of the fraction, tracking error. This represents the risk. It basically measures how wildly or consistently the manager performed compared to the benchmark. A high tracking error? That means they took big, bold bets that were way different from the index. That's a lot of risk. A low tracking error means they pretty much played it safe and hugged the benchmark.
So here's the crucial point. When you divide that active return by the tracking error, you get this one beautiful number that shows you how much extra return the manager squeezed out for every unit of risk they took by straying from the benchmark. It is all about efficiency.
All right, so that's the theory. But this ratio really comes to life when you see it in action. So let's walk through a few examples. But first, you need a rule of thumb. In the investment world, an information ratio of 0.50 is generally considered pretty good. Anything higher than that is great, and if you see a manager hitting 1.0, well, that is truly exceptional.
Okay, let's look at how this plays out. Take a look at scenario 3. The fund returned 15% when the benchmark only did 12%, and it did it with very low risk, a tracking error of just 2%. That gives it an absolutely fantastic IR of 1.50. You're looking at pure skill right there. But the most interesting case on this whole chart is actually scenario 5. This is where it gets good. In scenario 5, the fund actually lost 5%, but its benchmark lost 7%. So the manager's active return is a positive 2%. And because they took a moderate amount of risk, their information ratio is a solid 0.50. They lost money, sure, but they still demonstrated real skill. And this, right here, gets to the heart of the professional mindset. An amateur investor looks at that 5% loss and calls it a failure, period. But a professional sees that the manager protected capital better than the market, they mitigated the losses, they added real value. That is the power of the information ratio.
But look, no single metric can ever tell you the entire story. The IR is an absolutely critical tool for measuring skill, but the pros always use it as part of a complete toolkit.
The most common comparison you'll see is with the Sharpe ratio. The key difference is what they're measuring against. The Sharpe ratio measures return over some risk-free rate, like a government bond, so it's really about total performance. The information ratio, on the other hand, uses a risky index like the S&P 500, so it is laser-focused on the manager's unique skill relative to their specific playground.
And using them together gives you this amazing 360-degree view. A high Sharpe ratio, but a low IR? That could just mean the manager got lucky in a bull market. But a low Sharpe ratio with a high IR? kind of like in our example, that can signal true, battle-tested skill in a tough market.
So how can you use this wisely? It really comes down to 3 key steps. First, make sure the benchmark you're using actually makes sense for the fund's strategy. Second, always look at the IRR over longer time frames, at least 3 to 5 years, to see if the skill is consistent. And third, never use it in a vacuum.
And that really brings us to the most important takeaway of this whole thing. A high return is just a result. It's what happened. It could be luck. But a high information ratio, held steady over time, points directly to a repeatable, consistent skill.
So the next time you're looking at a fund's performance, the real question is, what are you going to focus on? Its returns or its skill?